Alright, hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We are definitely in the home stretch at this point because we are very much in our final unit now. We got just a couple more weeks to go here, which means we are going to have to pick up the pace just a little bit. I'm not really going to ratchet up too much the amount of work we're doing, maybe just like one extra thing per week, and I'm going to try to even not do that as much. We're probably going to have more notes than worksheets for this remaining unit, just because there's so much stuff to get through and we have such a small amount of time to, do it. So that is what we're going to do. We're going to have 4 notes videos this week, and then you'll have one like worksheet assignment you do. It'll be the battles of World War II, so same thing we did for the battles of World War I, just for World War II instead. So with that being said, let's start out with Appeasement. If you remember from the videos you watched last week, we looked at primarily Mussolini and Hitler coming up, but also Stalin coming up. And basically, Mussolini and Hitler gained power in the same way. Mussolini was first and Hitler was second. In fact, he based a lot of his tactics off of Mussolini. But they both generally gained power by kind of preying on the discontent and the economic vulnerability of the people in their country. They both made scapegoats. Mussolini blamed, the West and those what he called the capitalistic oligarchs, Britain and France and America for screwing over Italy. Hitler, there we go, blamed the same people, but he also blamed the socialists, which Mussolini also blamed. But then Hitler also blamed Jewish people and all kinds of other groups for their problems. And they used that anger and that kind of misdirected blame to get a lot of support. And they relied on nationalism, and they built up to a point where they were able to actually take control of the countries they were in. So now that Hitler is in control of Germany, this is when we're going to start seeing kind of the road to World War II in Europe starting. And the way that happens is appeasement. Now, you might recall that, I guess we'll get to this territory thing in a second. I got to really quick. You might recall that the Treaty of Versailles hamstringed Germany. It destroyed their military, it took a bunch of territory from them, it screwed over their economy, it made them pay back a bunch of money, and it put a lot of restrictions in place on them to basically make sure they couldn't do anything ever again. And as we often see with laws and restrictions like that, those are only going to matter if somebody enforces them. And who's going to enforce them? Maybe the League of Nations, but the League of Nations doesn't have any military force behind it, and America didn't join, so it's not really powerful in the first place. So primarily you're looking at the people that, passed the treaty, so like Britain and France, for example. They're going to be the ones that you would expect to enforce it. But how are Britain and France doing after World War I? Not well. They were also economically decimated by that war. They're dealing with a lot of internal problems. So now Hitler's in charge, and he's going to start kind of pushing those stipulations. For example, we know from those videos, how does Hitler feel about territory? Well, the picture's a pretty big hint here. He wants more territory. He feels like it's Germany's territory. They deserve it. They should have it. And therefore, he's going to go for it. In other words, and this is a direct quote from Hitler himself, we National Socialists, that's what the Nazis were called, even though they hated socialists, they called themselves National Socialists. We National Socialists must hold unflinchingly to our aim in foreign policy, namely to secure for the German people the land and soil to which they are entitled on this earth. They are entitled to territory, and they're going to take it. So, the first step to do that, you can't really take territory if you don't have a military. And Germany was disarmed by the Treaty of Versailles. So what do you do first? You rearm. So Hitler violates the Treaty of Versailles by starting to rearm Germany. He starts building up a mechanized infantry force, tanks and stuff like that. He starts building up an air force, the Luftwaffe. He starts rearming in terms of making more weapons and expanding the size of the military. All of this, again, direct violation of the Treaty of Versailles, but it's viewed as, to Hitler and his followers, a matter of national pride. It's a huge boost to the economy because who's making all that stuff? The German people, which means that you have jobs going and you're paying them. And those jobs are contributing money to the economy of Germany as a whole, which makes Hitler even more popular because now he's not only rearming Germany and helping them retake their pride, but he's also fixing the economy. That's something that Hitler does really well in Germany, is he really fixes the economy. Same thing with Mussolini in Italy. There's a famous kind of phrase or quote about him, which is, at least he made the trains run on time. They're fixing the day-to-day stuff that people are really concerned about, and that's making them more and more popular. And meanwhile, it's giving Germany a war machine that they're going to use to fight with going into World War II. So at this point, you would expect Britain and France to step in and go, no, wait a minute here. That is a violation of the treaty. They don't. Basically, France is having a really hard time. They were completely economically decimated by World War I. They've got internal political fighting going on. So when this is all going down, they kind of look to Britain and they're like, hey, Britain, what are we going to do about this? And Britain's like, I don't know, we got our own problems. You deal with it. They're your neighbor. And so France goes, all right, well, we can't deal with it, so nothing happens. And Germany is able to rearm themselves, and it works out great. So the message this sends to Hitler is, you can get away with stuff. So the next thing he's going to get away with is the Rhineland. So the Rhineland was demilitarized for Germany under the Treaty of Versailles. France was still able to put defensive positions and then have soldiers in there. The Rhineland, of course, is this chunk of territory right here. So now that, Germany is successfully rearmed and nobody did anything, in 1936, Hitler goes and sends some troops into the Rhineland. Just, got to rearm that. If France gets to be in there, we get to be in there too, according to Hitler. So this brings up an interesting point with Hitler in that he often ignored his military advisors. And sometimes it worked out for him, like we're going to see with the Rhineland. And sometimes it really doesn't work out for him, with things like Dunkirk. But either way, Hitler just ignores all of his advisors who are like, hey, it's way too risky, don't do it. If you piss off France and Britain too much, it's going to put us in a really bad space. And Hitler goes, whatever. And he reoccupies the Rhineland. And once again, France goes to Britain. Britain goes, not our problem. That's your territory. It's your issue. So France doesn't get any support. France doesn't do anything. And Germany gets away, once again, with whatever he wants to do. So now, if we're putting ourselves in Hitler's shoes, you just got away with rearming Germany. Then you got away with pretty blatantly breaking the territorial terms of the Treaty of Versailles. What are you going to think about that? You could do more. So another term of the Treaty of Versailles, as we talked about, is Austria-Hungary is no longer Austria-Hungary. It is now Austria and Hungary. So that is very much broken up after all of this. Its territory is significantly reduced. All of this used to be Austria-Hungary. Now this is Austria, this is Hungary, you got Czechoslovakia, all the stuff we talked about before. So Hitler decides that Austria right over here should be part of Germany. They shouldn't be an ally of Germany, which is what they were previously. No. They should be a part of Germany. And a big help to this is there are a fair number of Germans and a fair number of Nazis in Austria. So in 1938, the Austrian government decides to call for an independence vote. And Hitler just, politely mentions that there is a right choice and a wrong choice in this vote. And if they make the right choice, Austria can join Germany. And if they make the wrong choice, Germany can invade Austria and make sure that they join Germany. Basically, vote for the Nazis or we're going to invade you. Obviously, again, this is a pretty big violation of the Treaty of Versailles. But, what are people going to do? So far, they've done nothing. So in March of 1938, March is apparently an eventful month because that was, 1937 when they reoccupied the Rhineland. Germany goes into Austria. This is not actually an invasion per se. They're just, they're going to help make sure that the voting process goes smoothly. they are met by huge crowds of cheering Austrians. And I point this out because after the war, a lot of people are like, well, Germany, they forced us to do everything. And for some people, that might be true. But for a lot of Austrians, they actually welcomed the Nazis into Austria. However, we see something just a little bit suspicious here. The vote goes through, and it passes with 99.73% of people voting to make Austria a German province. Now, let me tell you a little bit something about democracy. People do not agree on stuff. If you got a room of 100 people together and told them they were all going to get free pizza, as long as they can 100% agree unanimously on what kind of free pizza they were going to get, there is a decent chance that room would not get free pizza. And that's voting on free pizza. What do you think the chances are that 99.73% of a population legitimately votes to become part of a different country? It's not exactly the most legit election. You've got things like Nazi troops supervising the elections, which means that they're standing in the same room with you while you vote, and they've got guns, and there is no anonymous voting going on. There's no voting booths. They can see directly what you write on your form. That is a little bit of a reason to maybe just vote for the Nazis, because if you don't, you might be in trouble. So Austria is now part of Germany. And at this point, the international community's got to do something, right? I mean, rearmament, that's bad, but it's not the end of the world. Germany's rebuilding its military. The Rhineland, I mean, they put troops in there, but they didn't necessarily take over the territory. Here, Germany has just taken over another country. They didn't necessarily do it by invasion, but they did send troops into that country and supervise their vote and definitely have a very undemocratic voting system. The international community has to do something, and they do. They lodge a couple of very disappointed complaints. And that's it. So Austria has been Anschlussed. That's what this is called, is the Anschluss. So now they're part of Germany. And again, let's go back to Hitler here, who has been advised by his military advisors repeatedly that he's being too aggressive and he might piss off the West, and if he pisses off the West, you're going to get in big trouble. But now he's rearmed Germany, reoccupied the Rhineland, and taken over Austria, and all that's happened is some people have complained. Next up, it's the Munich Agreement. So Austria has been squared away. Rhineland has been not squared away necessarily, but reoccupied. There's some more stuff that you can go for if you are Hitler. Now he's setting his eyes on Czechoslovakia. Because remember, Austria-Hungary used to be this whole area, right? So Czechoslovakia was made mostly by Austrian territory, but it was also partially made by German territory. And in that German territory, which is called the Sudetenland, these pink areas here, there is still a German majority. So pretty soon after the Anschluss, Hitler decides to make a claim that the Sudetenland should be German territory because it's got a German majority, and most of it used to be German territory anyway, and therefore it's Germany's. And he moves troops to the border to attack. He's not even playing games with voting this time or pretending to be diplomatic or neutral here. He's saying, hey, that's my territory, and if you don't give it back, I'm going to invade. Finally, the West steps in. Chamberlain, the Prime Minister of Britain, flies to Germany. He doesn't even make Hitler come to Britain. He goes to Hitler, and he decides to negotiate with him in the summer, September of 1938. And he comes back with a big announcement. He tells people that there will be peace in our time and that he has secured a great diplomatic victory. Here is what happened. There was a four-power conference that was held in Munich. Czechoslovakia was not invited. They were deciding territory from Czechoslovakia, and they did not invite Czechoslovakia. So at this conference, it is an interesting case of Britain putting their foot down by giving Hitler what he wanted. Yeah, That's I didn't misspeak there. That's what happened. Chamberlain flies out there and he goes, "Hey, look, Hitler, how about you get the Sudetenland and you pinky promise not to attack the rest of Czechoslovakia?" And Hitler goes, "All right." So Hitler gets the Sudetenland. Chamberlain comes back and makes all these big claims about how he has secured peace for our times. Problem is, the Sudetenland was a big industrial and defensive area for Czechoslovakia, and they lost that because it was given up to Germany. And the following year, March of 1939, Germany, gasp, breaks their pinky promise and just takes over the rest of Czechoslovakia. This isn't even a meme. This is just a quote from a show, but it's an amazing quote, and it fits very well. So, once again, let's put ourselves in Hitler's mind state here. He is now convinced he can do whatever he wants. The West is never going to stand up to him, and even if they did, they have put so much focus on appeasement that, how are they going to stop Hitler at this point? They've let him rebuild his army. They've let him reoccupy the main defensive area that France had against Germany. They've let him take over 2 separate countries and, build up even more military strength. The prime opportunity to stop Germany has long since passed. So now, Hitler's going to move on to their next acquisition. And for this one, they got to get involved with another one of our friends, Stalin. Look at that, our little Poland working together here. So Germany and Russia get together, and they make this thing called the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. This is also called the Nazi-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact. It's the same thing. It's the different name for the same agreement. So this is an agreement that is made in August of 1939, and basically what it says is, hey, Poland exists. And Poland was created using territory from Germany and Russia. So both countries want Poland. They don't want to fight over Poland, though. So publicly, they come to an agreement with the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, which is that neither Germany nor Russia will attack each other. They will not ally with an enemy of the other side. So if Britain is Germany's enemy, then Russia will not ally with them. And they will not aid an enemy of the other side. So same idea. There were, however, a lot of secret terms to this treaty. Those secret terms were that Romania, Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, and Finland are going to be divided into German and Soviet spheres of influence. And basically, Germany's going to get Western Poland, the part that used to be Germany, and Russia gets everything else, because that used to be Russian territory. So that is now divided up. So they're being kind of truthful with saying they're not going to fight each other, but specifically the secret part here is they're planning to take over all these territories, and they're not going to fight each other over those territories. So Germany now gets to fight without worrying about an Eastern Front. And remember, that was a huge problem in World War I, and as we saw in the videos, Hitler was a soldier in World War I, and his thinking was very much shaped by World War I. So he really wants to make sure that there's no two-front war again if that happens, and he has done so. So now, Germany gets to invade Poland. And remember what I mentioned back at the Treaty of Versailles, that some genius decided to make this thing called the Polish Corridor and cut off German territory? So you got German territory here, and German territory here, and then Poland in between. So in September of 1939, Germany invades Poland. This is generally marked as the start of World War II in Europe. It's not like, there's a specific time where you definitely, you could argue before, you could argue after, but most people view the invasion of Poland as the start of World War II in Europe. Hitler justifies this in a very interesting way. And I think the best way to describe it is just the German name for this war, the 1939 Defensive War. Because sometimes to defend yourself, you have to invade Poland. So Hitler's argument here is especially interesting considering, the Holocaust, because he argues that the Polish corridor and other parts of Poland, all these lined areas, have a German majority, but they're a minority in Poland. And as a result, they are being subjected to a bloody terror and being driven from their homes. And if there's one thing that Hitler can't agree with, it's targeting an ethnic minority with bloody terror and driving them from their homes. Hitler would never do that because it's wrong. Again, the hypocrisy, the irony of this, right? So he's justifying invading Poland because he says the Germans are being attacked, which, by the way, they weren't. But, he wants to invade Poland, so he does. So Poland is invaded by Germany, which is a war they would already lose. But then a couple of weeks later, Russia attacks them from the east. So now they are being sandwiched by two countries that can completely decimate them on their own. Poland is forced to give up almost immediately. They cannot win this war. And the West finally does something. On September 3rd, 2 days after Germany attacks, France and Britain, and then, of course, the British Commonwealth, the Dominion, declare war on Germany. But they're not really ready to fight yet. They got to mobilize. So by the time that Britain and France mobilize, Poland has been destroyed. So they declared war on Germany to save Poland, and by the time they're ready to fight, Poland is no more. So what's going to result is a couple of months of this thing called the Phony War, also known as Sitzkrieg, which I think is an amazing pun. I didn't make it up. It was actually a historical term that the media used to refer to it, where Britain and France just kind of sat there and did nothing because, they're not going to invade Germany. Poland's gone now, and Germany doesn't want to fight them yet, so there's going to be a couple of months stalemate. But the war has officially started. It's good to go. So this is an activity that we were going to do, but we're not actually going to do. I just want to make one kind of final point as we wrap up here. It's really easy to look at Britain and France and be like, what the hell? Why? Why did you appease Hitler so much? Why would you let him do that? And there is a huge aspect to that is true. If Britain and France would have stepped up earlier, Germany never would have gotten that strong. But it's also one of those things where realistically there wasn't really another outcome. Britain and France were not ready to fight another war again. They didn't want to fight another war again. They didn't have the support or the economy or the military troops to fight another war again. Maybe if America was still involved, that would have given them the support they needed, but America wasn't involved. We cut ourselves off from the world. So you have Britain and France with this mindset of we have to avoid another war no matter what because Europe can't handle another war. And then you have Hitler with the mindset of I will take whatever I can take and nobody will stop me. So in a way, this is kind of inevitable. There's no real way this wasn't going to happen. But regardless, we have now started World War II in Europe. Hooray! So next time we'll talk a little bit more about that. Thank you.